Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann. And the term reactive abuse and the concept in and of itself is bullshit.
What?
Don't know what I'm talking about? Reactive abuse has become one of the new buzzwords by shitty people to make individuals that they push over the edge and then snap feel bad for doing something back. So in reality, what you've got is somebody who's very abusive, either physically or emotionally, either through verbal insults or stonewalling and such, and then they make the other person get to their breaking point so that they snap, and then the person that was the abuser tries to flip the script via the Uno reverse card and say, "Oh, you're abusing me now. How dare you?"
You don't say.
Now, I already had heard this term months ago and thought it was fucking stupid. And it got to be even more nerve-wracking when
the Beast
herself started to use it. She went on one of her little tangents about when I snap at her and tell her that she is constantly calling me names and slinging mud and spouting vitriol and sending me paragraph-long text messages to get her point across and sounding like a fucking lunatic. She's like, "Your reactive abuse is not something I'm going to put up with." And I'm just going to tell you right now, as soon as she said that shit, I went, okay, well, this is going to be problematic because she thinks that she's the victim now, which is not the case. Now, I have talked about how she has stated herself she believes that she has undiagnosed borderline personality disorder, and I've gone over how I believe she is correct due to her chaotic interpersonal communication style and her relationships being very volatile, and she turns people away, and she'll be really nice when she needs something, but most of the time she's from 0 to 100 like that, and it's just not something that makes it easy to be around her. But people with BPD will push your buttons until you lose your shit, and then they'll claim umbrage and be like, "Oh, how dare you."
So dumb.
Another person I knew that openly stated that they had BPD was Bubbles, that annoying, bespectacled dipshit that looked like somebody pissed in his gene pool, who I used to work with and did many episodes explaining all of his hijinks and mental health issues.
My son.
Now, he would be the same way. He would be fucking annoying on purpose and wonder why everybody was so upset with him all the time, because he was completely lacking in self-awareness. But hallmark of BPD is these people feel like they are perpetually victims. But they just henpeck you. They come at you hard. They don't have any self-control over their mood, and they just lose their shit and just fucking attack you over and over again. And it gets to be sickening, and then you snap, and they're like, "Oh, how dare you?" And I have to say this. If you are a person in this day and age that relies upon the use of the term reactive abuse to make people feel bad for telling you you're a piece of shit when you've been treating them like absolute garbage, you are retarded. Because the concept of reactive abuse is that, oh, well, now the victim has become the abuser, and they want to say that your reaction is everybody's bad as their action. But that's not how that works. They're the antagonist. You're the protagonist. They're coming at you.
False equivalency.
They're the ones who started it. And that's an important concept that I'm going to explain in the next episode. But back to reactive abuse. It just seems to me to be something in terms of a mental health coping strategy to process their own perceived victimhood. The world's out to get them. Everybody gives them a raw deal. They're not a bad person for constantly telling people what's up. And it's like, dude, you are. And what you really have is an inability to see your actions for what they are, and you are completely averse to taking accountability for the terrible way that you treat those around you. But the interesting thing about this is the old adage, you can only kick a dog so much before it bites you. So you've got someone that is constantly henpecking you, and you try to take it, you try to be the bigger person, you don't sink to their level and start name-calling, or starting counter-arguments, or stonewalling them, or doing a number of other passive-aggressive tactics to try to make them feel shitty, which, by the way, they're not going to feel shitty. People with BPD, they fucking don't. They think, again, constantly, they are the one that is the victim in the scenario, no matter what's going on, or a mountain of evidence that might suggest otherwise. So now think of yourself if you're being attacked constantly in a relationship, friendship, family, romantic, what have you. And that person is constantly fucking on you. And then you snap on them. Now, they have provoked you for so fucking long that no one in their right mind is going to blame you for losing your shit and sticking up for yourself. However, in today's day and age, you can't react to anything because of workplace anti-violence policies that are zero tolerance, and you can't be like, leave me alone, you asshole. Oh, you just swore and you raised your voice. Oh, you're the one that's attacking now. So you got to be careful. But again, if you try to push someone to their limit and they flip the fuck out on you, you totally have it coming. And at no point should you sit there and feel like, oh, well, how can they treat me so bad? Because that just makes you sound like an absolute fucking lunatic. Now, basically, what you've got is somebody who is defending themselves because they're sick of being mistreated. So then to label that abuse is very problematic. It is a form of self-defense. They're sticking up for themselves. They're advocating for their own feelings and mental health well-being. And to sit there and say, well, now you're abusing me, or, oh my God, you're terrible. Which some people do it almost professionally because they use a tactic known as DARVO. Now, DARVO is an acronym that refers to a concept of narcissistic abuse. And what DARVO stands for is deny, attack, and reverse victim offender. And you're like, well, what the fuck does that mean? Let me break it down for you. The abuser denies that they are doing anything wrong, and they try to gaslight the victim into thinking they're making it up, and they have the wrong perspective, and that the person that's being accused has done nothing wrong. So this is basically minimizing or dismissing the victim's experience and invalidating their feelings. A, for attack, the perpetrator will then shift the focus from their own actions to attacking the victim's credibility or character. They're like, hey, you don't know what you're talking about and you're misremembering that. Remember this time and that time that you got some details wrong? Anything they can do to further gaslight you to make you think that you don't know what you're talking about. And they'll start making counterclaims or blaming you for the situation devolving into an argument. And they try to discredit you altogether and make you question your own credibility. Now, the RVO for reverse victim and offender is they flip the script on you. They're like, I'm not the abuser. You're attacking me. How dare you say that I'm doing that to you? I'm doing nothing of the sort. So now maybe you're confused and you're like, what the fuck just happened? And they have gotten you to think, well, maybe I was wrong in how I perceive things. But most likely you are not. What is going on is that they are trying to play that Uno reverse card dynamic on you and make you think that you've done something wrong. So now you're the one abusing them. They're the victim. And it's difficult for the person that was confronting to seek any sort of justice or support via apology or acknowledgement and recognition. Now, to use an example from my own life,
The Beast
used to sit there and harp on me when we were together about her drinking and driving or her smoking weed in the driveway in a vehicle that was in my name and title and insured by me. And I was always afraid that she was going to get pulled over, get a Dewey, and there'd be fucking whiskey plates on a van that was technically hers that is now registered to my name, which fucking sucks. So instead of saying, oh, I'm sorry that I make you feel that way, I will not drink and drive after work anymore. And by drink and drive, I mean she'd get off of work, she'd have her after work shot, which normally I think is more than one beverage, honestly. And then she'd hop behind the wheel and rush home before it really kicked in and she got shit-faced. And then she'd come home and we'd argue about her drinking and driving, and she'd get just to the point of drunkenness when she got through the door and the fight started, and she'd just unleash hell on me. And she'd sit there and try to flip the script on me and be like, you know what, I'm sick of the way you're always trying to scold me like this. I'm not a child. I need a boyfriend, not a dad. I have a dad. Which is a total adult with a 14-year-old soul type of answer. And not anything that you should fail to expect from somebody who does not take accountability for their actions. Now, she's still doing it to this day, and every time I tell her that she talks to me horribly, she communicates in a really ineffective and offensive manner, and that she needs to get her mental health in check, she then flips it on me and is like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm fine. You're spiraling and you don't want to acknowledge it. And she makes it try to seem like I'm the one who's losing my shit. Now, I'm not calling her names or swearing superfluously like she does, and sending 6 or 7 or maybe up to 10 paragraph length text messages full of vitriol. And then she starts slinging mud and calling me names and making fun of shit going on in my life to try to provoke a fucking reaction. But I don't lose my shit on her because I'm not stupid and I've been dealing with this cunt for 15 years. It's not my first lap around the track. I will not be goaded into a fight. If anything, I'm going to stand there and it's going to drive her fucking nuts. And that is not just me bragging. It literally has happened. There have been times she talks all this shit and I stand there and I stare her dead in the eyes and I can feel her discomfort. And then she starts to talk about how you're a piece of shit and you need to get the fuck out of here before I do something that lands me in jail again. Well, yeah, that's you trying to make me feel like I've done something wrong instead of acknowledging that you're completely out of hand.
Darvo.
She denies she's done anything wrong, and then she attacks my credibility by trying to throw counterclaims and talk shit, and she then reverses the victim-offender dynamic by pretending that I'm the one doing something wrong when it's all her. And she doesn't know this, but recently I've taken to calling her the Darvo Queen, because I don't know anybody else in my life that has a bigger chip on their shoulder against the world when they are in fact the one who mistreats everyone around them. She yells at our kids nonstop. Recently, she told our 12-year-old to go fuck herself because she made kind of a smart alecky remark, but she was calling her out on her shit. That being, she gets pissed off when my girlfriend tries to drive the kids to school, but then when she wants her to drive them to school, she's all, oh, hey, can you drive them to school? It's like, fucking pick a lane. Is it terrible or do you want it done? Now, I get the situation varies by whose day it is, but either way, if somebody's like, I'm going to drive the kids to school, you should just say, oh, thank you, instead of turning it into a fucking fight like they're overstepping their boundaries. They're trying to help you and take care of our kids, and they're assisting me in making sure they get to school in a timely fashion, and they don't freak the fuck out about being late because
The Beast
tends to run late all the fucking time. She suffers from time blindness. It's a subcomponent of her ADHD. What do I mean by that? Well, it's a very telling sign of an adult with ADHD. They cannot manage their time. They procrastinate constantly, and they are habitually late everywhere they go, and they end up having to make up excuses. Now, she has lost multiple jobs in the last few years due to attendance issues involving tardiness and then just sleeping through alarms, air quotes, allegedly, and then just not calling in to say anything. Not the type of problems that a responsible adult has. Those are like, I just got out of college or I'm in college and I drank too much last night or I'm a worthless piece of shit type of problems. Responsible individuals and those that are managers or administrators do not expect this out of people that are knocking on the doorstep of 40 years old. And I wish that I could say that it is unique to just the mother of my oldest 2 children, but it is in fact something I'm very familiar with before I knew the term Darvo, due to my mother, who is famously absolutely fucking insane and takes all of her shit out on everybody, and then when you call her out on it, she cries like a baby and acts like she's being victimized. Son of a bitch! It is the saddest fucking thing to see somebody who is in their 70s now act like, well, we don't always see eye to eye, but sometimes you just have such a temper. And it's like, I don't have a temper. You fucking attack my credibility and tell me that I make things up and I'm not remembering things properly, which is why I call her Granny Gaslight. And then you sit there and act like you're innocent, and none of the claims I make about how shitty of a mom you were when I was in my tweens, teens, and early 20s. You just like, oh, you make things up. No, I don't, you fat bitch, because that would destroy my credibility. And once that's gone, nobody believes anything you have to say, especially these days in the times of snap judgment, short attention spans, and black and white thinking. Now, what I'm referring to, the greatest example of Darvo that my mom has ever fucking shown me is when my cousin was dying last year, and she said to me, you know, you say how terrible it was when I used to talk about how I want to divorce your dad and I'd take your sister and he could take you and I'd be fine and he'd be miserable. She literally, like a script, would say it so many times. She's like, but I was just saying that because you were acting so terribly. And it's just like, God, you fucking cunt. I thought you were going to apologize. I sat here and convinced myself in the moment perhaps an old dog had learned a new trick, but no, here's Linda flipping the script on me and trying to act like her inability to get her emotions in check when she's flustered and not say hurtful things to her loved ones while losing her mind in the moment. Nope, it's all our fault. In this case, it was my fault because I was, quote, acting so terribly, which is not the case. One time she said it when I spilled a bowl of soup in the kitchen, and another time when I accidentally had a cabinet door open in the bathroom and she walked by. She's like, shut the door, and I went to shut the door, and I forgot the cabinet door was open, and then I closed the bathroom door and the cabinet door and said, Jesus Christ! And then she went on her tirade of divorce threats, which if I was my dad, I would have been like, please fucking do it. I want my freedom so goddamn bad. None of that information is new. I've been telling those stories the same way for decades because that shit happened when I was a teenager and I'm about to be 43. But getting back to the conversation of the term reactive abuse and what a bullshit concept it is, because really what it is somebody defending themselves. And I want you to ask yourself this. Wouldn't you expect anybody that has a reasonable amount of self-esteem and self-worth to lose their mind on somebody that constantly calls them names, cuts them down, treats them poorly, and shits all over them and takes advantage of them? Doesn't that seem like expectable human behavior? So calling it abuse is really unfair because it's the victim who's doing the attacking back, and like a cornered animal, they're just in fight or flight mode. This is for their own mental health and emotional survival and stability. If you're the victim, then the bad behavior of you lashing back out can sometimes be explained and justified as non-abusive because it is a response to being abused. But on the other hand, if you're the abuser, then you will never take responsibility. You will blame the other person for your bad behavior and minimize the bad behavior as not being abusive. The way to change and end these habits includes taking full responsibility for your actions. But most of those people won't, especially if they have BPD. As my former therapist told me a year and a half ago, most people with BPD can go to therapy 3 times a week, and 70% of the time there is zero change. It's just one of those mental health issues that is so fucking hard to fix, and it just goes cyclically. So how do you know if you're the victim or the abuser? Well, I'll tell you this. If somebody's constantly telling you they're sick of the way that you yell at them all the time and call them names and bring up old shit to make them feel really lowly and lacking in self-worth, and if you sling mud and take cheap shots at people, you're clearly the abuser. But if you are constantly being told you're a piece of shit when all you're doing is defending yourself or trying to steer the conversation, then you're the victim, not the abuser. If you are constantly being called names by somebody and they're taking pot shots at you, feel free to tell them they're an asshole. It doesn't make you an abuser. It just means that you're sticking up for yourself. And although it may be reactive, it is not, in fact, abuse. Interact with the show on Twitter, @WhatDoWeCallIt. That is @WhatDoWeCallIt. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/WhatDoWeCallIt podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann. And that's the end.